Welcome back. Okay, let's dive right into this. Today, we're unpacking the life, the mission, and honestly, the absolutely astonishing legacy of Jim Elliot. We're looking at an American missionary whose unwavering commitment to his faith sparked one of the most dramatic historical accounts of the 20th century. We're going to trace his journey, from his early life all the way deep into the dense Ecuadorian rainforest. And as you'll see, we're going to explore how an unimaginable tragedy transformed into this unbelievable story of reconciliation. Now, to really get Jim Elliot, you have to understand his core philosophy. He famously wrote this in his journal: "He is no fool who gives what he cannot keep to gain what he cannot lose." That quote right there, that's the thematic core of our whole explainer today. Elliot believed that earthly life and physical safety, well, they were temporary, things he literally couldn't keep anyway. But his spiritual mission? That was eternal. This radical philosophy of sacrifice wasn't just some catchy phrase for him, it was the absolute blueprint for every single decision he was about to make. Which brings us to Section 1, an unwavering calling. Born in 1927 in a devout home in Portland, Jim Elliot didn't just, wake up one day and decide to venture into the complete unknown. His beliefs were cultivated really young. Even as a teenager, he was known for this intense, burning passion for sharing his faith. He eventually headed off to Wheaton College to totally immerse himself in studying Greek and theology. And it was during these intense college years that a major shift happened. He became absolutely convinced that God was calling him to be a missionary, specifically to reach people who had never even heard the gospel. He truly believed no sacrifice was too great to obey this call. So right after graduation, this intense conviction pushed him straight into postgraduate action, leading him to pack up and travel down to Ecuador. But actually, scratch that. Before we follow him all the way to Ecuador, there's a crucial detail from his time at Wheaton we've got to mention. It was there that he met Elisabeth. Now, Elisabeth would not only become his wife, but as we're going to see a bit later in this explainer, she becomes a highly influential Christian writer and honestly a massive central figure in the incredible aftermath of this whole story. So definitely keep her in mind because her role in this narrative is absolutely pivotal. Moving right along, let's jump into Section 2, Journey to Ecuador. So when Jim first arrived, he actually started his missionary work among the Quechua people, just to kind of learn the environment. You can think of this period as his practical, on-the-ground training. But the truly perilous mission lying ahead involved the Huaorani people. They were an isolated indigenous group living deep, deep within the Ecuadorian rainforest, and they had a fierce reputation. The source material highlights that they were known for actively resisting outsiders with a very recognized history of violence toward literally anyone who dared to step foot in their territory. So it sets up this massive historical contrast, right? On one side, you have these missionaries arriving with entirely peaceful intentions, and on the exact opposite side, a tribe fiercely determined to protect their isolated existence at any cost. This takes us right into Section 3, Operation Auca. Now, what's really interesting about this part is the team itself. In 1955, fully recognizing the incredible danger of establishing a first contact, Jim Elliot didn't try to go it alone. He joined forces with 4 other deeply committed guys: Nate Saint, Ed McCully, Pete Fleming, and Roger Udarian. 5 young men all sharing the exact same deep-seated conviction that every people group deserved the opportunity to hear about Jesus Christ, regardless of the massive physical danger it posed to themselves. And the logistics of their plan? Meticulous. Step 1. Utilize a small airplane piloted by Nate Saint to safely scout the whole area from above. Step 2. To clearly signal their peaceful intentions, they flew over the dense jungle canopy and physically lowered gifts down to the Huaorani. And Step 3. After spending time trying to build this remote, long-distance rapport, they finally landed the plane right on a sandbar along the Huaorani River to actually meet the members of the tribe face-to-face. And this is exactly where the narrative tension really starts to build. After all that planning, and honestly, all that extreme risk, their very first interactions on that sandbar actually appeared super friendly and encouraging. It looked like the gifts had worked. The language barriers were slowly being navigated. For a brief, hopeful moment, it really looked like Operation Auca was going to be a completely peaceful success. They had miraculously bridged the gap between 2 entirely different worlds. But history tells a very different story. Section 4. Tragedy on the River. The facts of that day are just stark and absolutely devastating. On January 8, 1956, the situation suddenly violently shifted. A group of Huaorani warriors attacked the camp. All 5 missionaries, Jim Elliot, Nate Saint, Ed McCully, Pete Fleming, and Roger Udarian, were killed. The loss was just total. To put that tragic sacrifice into perspective for a second, Jim Elliot was only 28 years old when he died on that sandbar. And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer depth of their convictions. The missionaries were not defenseless out there. They actually carried firearms with them into the jungle. But as the attack happened, they reportedly made the active, conscious choice not to use deadly force to defend themselves. No way. Why? Because of their fundamental belief system. They had decided beforehand that they would absolutely not kill people who hadn't yet heard the gospel. They prioritized the spiritual state of their attackers way above their own physical survival. It's just a profound historical paradox. News of this event spread like wildfire worldwide, deeply shocking Christians across so many nations. It was a massive blow, which naturally leaves us with this crucial question. How do you respond to the ultimate loss? I mean, really, when your husband, your brother, your close friend is killed in such a sudden, incredibly violent way, what's the normal human reaction? For most of us, it'd probably be intense anger, a loud demand for justice, or maybe just retreating from the world entirely in grief.
But that brings us to Section 5, a legacy of forgiveness.
The resolution to this tragedy is so mind-blowing, it almost feels like a movie script, but it is 100% historically accurate. Rather than seeking any kind of revenge or demanding a military response from the government, Jim's widow, Elisabeth Elliot, and a missionary named Rachel Saint, who happened to be the sister of the murdered pilot, Nate Saint, they made the unbelievable choice to go back. They returned to the harsh Ecuadorian rainforest to literally live among the exact same Huaorani people who had just killed their loved ones. So the crucial point is exactly how they approached this return. They certainly didn't arrive carrying anger or resentment. Their methods were rooted entirely in patient friendship, Bible teaching, and this radical, visible, everyday forgiveness. By living right alongside the tribe and showing them profound love instead of retaliation, that massive cultural wall finally came down. And as a direct result of this intense, patient love, many Huaorani people ended up embracing Christianity.
And here is the ultimate twist that our source material provides. It wasn't just, general members of the tribe who were impacted. Several of the actual men who were directly physically involved in the attack that killed the 5 missionaries eventually became Christian believers themselves. And not just passive believers either. They grew to become key church leaders right within their own community. It is a completely stunning demonstration of the remarkable power of forgiveness and reconciliation to totally transform lives.
The ripple effects of this story, though, they didn't just stay hidden in the rainforest. Jim Elliot's lasting influence has spread all over the globe, largely because he kept such detailed journals throughout his entire life. Elisabeth Elliot, utilizing her incredible writing talent, later published these, leading to massive, highly influential books like Shadow of the Almighty and The Journals of Jim Elliot. The whole story has even been adapted into major documentaries and feature films, like End of the Spear, ensuring that this epic narrative of sacrifice and forgiveness just continues to reach new audiences around the world today. As we wrap up this explainer, let's take a look at one more really famous quote from Jim Elliot. God always gives his best to those who leave the choice with him. That right there perfectly encapsulates his wholehearted devotion and his focus on eternal priorities. Whether you personally share his specific faith or not, his pure willingness to surrender his own safety for a cause he so deeply believed in, that is just a universally compelling piece of human history. Which leaves us with this final, provocative thought to ponder. We've seen today how an incredible, heart-wrenching tragedy was met not with a cry for vengeance, but with a grace that literally transformed the very people who committed the violence. So ask yourself, if that kind of profound forgiveness can transform the deepest hatred into genuine reconciliation, what impossible conflict in our world could it solve next? Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer, and keep questioning the world around you.